He's interesting, man. Okay, let's go. So we are in middle. I'm sorry to interrupt. So we are in middle of the second os, the second piece in middle of the section of Min HaEnoshi, all about human beings. What does it mean to be human? So we're in the middle of that piece. And the last thing we spoke about was the fact that we are made up of both a body and soul, and our body draws us in one direction, our soul draws us in another direction. And then he says, V'simatze beinehem milchama. So there's a war. There's a war between both body and soul. Ba'ofen, in the fashion, in what way? Shem tigbar haneshama. If the soul overcomes, the soul is strong. Tis'alahi. What it does is it elevates itself, the soul is elevated, and it also elevates the body. Via osa adam, and this person, if the soul is doing its thing, if the soul is overcoming the body, then this person, hamishtalim b'shleimus ha'mu'utad, is someone who becomes perfect in the perfection of the future, meaning a perfection that is, we'll talk about it, is going to impact the person in the future as well. And if a person allows for the physicality to do its thing, okay, then hine yishval haguf, the body gets lowered, v'tishval nishmaso imo, and the soul gets lowered as well. Via this person is not going to be fit for that perfection, and it's going to be completely kept away from the person, heaven forbid. So what he's telling us over here is very important in terms of the way we think about ourselves, because we grow up sometimes, we grow up in the sense that you think, the good deeds that you do, you get a mitzvah note, right? And the bad deeds that you do, I don't know, maybe you get like an avera note, and we think, I don't know, I have this imagery in my head as a child of like the scale, right? The scale, Rosh Hashanah, the scale. And so basically God is going ahead and putting things on a scale, mitzvah notes, you have like, your mom writing mitzvah notes for you, and your like worst teacher writing like avera notes, and they're putting them on the thing, and basically, you're back and forth, and basically, a person has enough good mitzvahs, fantastic, go this way, not, you go that way, and that's both Rosh Hashanah, both in Olam Haba. He says, not true. What's happening over here is that there's the assessment of who we are, or the assessment of this, the good and the bad, is really a question of who we are, right? In other words, the battle over here is, when we come to Shemaim, just to use it as an example, when May I ask 120, when we come to heaven, there's no scale. The scale, that all it is we show up and it's like, who is this person in front of us? Did the soul overcome because there's a battle that's constantly happening. Did the soul overcome the body, or did the body overcome the soul? We stand there in front of God and like, who is this person? And you see it right there, right? Because every day, every moment, there's a change. Like imagine, like, I don't know, think of like these war-torn regions, like Syria back, not that long ago, like constantly changing borders, right? That's what's going on inside of us at every moment. At every moment, the borders of who we are, of who is in control, sometimes it's in control by the rebels, sometimes it's in control by the authority, whatever it is, but it's constantly shifting. That is the judgment. That is, and more than judgment, that is who we are, right? It's not just a collection of mitzvos and a collection of averos, something external to us. No, the mitzvos and averos are transforming us. When we do mitzvos, the more of our body, more of our soul gets elevated, and our body gets elevated. We change for the good. And we do averos, then we change for the bad, or we're no longer controlled by the good forces, we're controlled by the bad forces. So there's this constant civil war within ourselves as to how we're going to define ourselves. And again, it is constantly changing. Okay, so when we think about the mitzvos and averos, it's not just this external collection outside of us, but it's a question of who we are. Who am I? And today it's going to change, and maybe in 10 minutes from now it's going to change, and in 20 minutes it's going to change, because there's constantly this shift within ourselves in terms of those two directions. Now, the analogy is perfect. The one place the analogy falls short is the next line, and that is that in a war, in theory, one nation could rout the other nation entirely, and it'll be over. And theoretically, you could say the forces of evil could overcome the forces of good entirely, and maybe the battle is going to be over. But he says, no, that's not true. He says, La'adam hazeh, even this person who we just spoke about, who the guf is so much stronger, the guf overcomes the neshama, and they are completely pushed away from goodness. However, a person always has the ability to push down his physicality in front of his neshama, and to achieve perfection, as we spoke about. So in other words, the cause is never lost. As opposed to all wars, where you could theoretically have an end to the war, over here it doesn't happen. As long as we live, as long as we breathe, we have a neshama that's attached to us, and as small as it may get, and although it may only have like the tiniest amount of territory, so to speak, in our analogy, that little bit always has the ability to come back, to spring forward, and to be able to go ahead and overcome the physicality. So it's never lost. Although we sometimes feel like, forget it, I've done so much bad, I've made so many mistakes, I have nothing left in this war. The answer is it's not true. That's not the way God made us. God made us with the ability for the soul to always be able to come back, to return, and to be able to overcome the physical. Okay.